Welcome to the channel where all you gotta do is repower this skid steer. So this is my inexpensive skid steer. Bought it off eBay, I don't know, 5 years ago or something. And the guy gave it, I think, a good deal on it because it was quote unquote grumpy. And it showed up on the trailer with a can of ether. And I needed that can of ether to get it started. Subsequently, I've done a little bit of work to it, not much. Had a wheel bearing leak. That's a non-leaking wheel bearing. Well, the seal, not the bearing. I also had to fix this guy, which is there's like a face seal in there to make the variable speed shift move in and out, and that didn't work. So I had to fix that, and I had to add some mufflers because it was really loud. Not that it made it a heck of a lot different. And then, I don't know, a couple of years into my ownership, the thing would not start anymore. So I did a compression check on it, and these two cylinders had 0, essentially, like maybe 5 psi compression. And the front cylinders didn't have much either, like 40 and 30 or something like that. So not much, but since the back was easy to replace the head gasket, which is what I assumed it was a problem, I pulled that head off, machined it back flat, put some pictures in here on what I did there, and I threw it back together, and then it magically started. But this past week, I had a big pile of bricks over here that I needed to move. Home Depot delivered them to a nice convenient spot for them, but not for me. So I was using the skid steer, affectionately known as Ricardo, to move them. And I shut the thing off, went to lunch, came back out here, loaded it full of bricks, and I've been trying to get the thing started every day since, and I've given up. It's dead. It cranks and cranks and spitters and sputters and makes believe it's going to start, but it doesn't start. So I'm going to pull the motor out of this thing and see what's wrong with it. Probably, I'll probably take it apart and see what's wrong and then rebuild it. But I'm not sure it's going to go back in this thing. Depending on what it looks like, I may just replace it with a modern V-twin with, you know, electronic governor and less emissions and less noise and all that stuff. So, but we'll see. We'll take it apart. If it's just a blown head gasket, maybe I'll put it back in. But the problem with this thing is it's just really hard to start. Like, you have to have a master's degree in internal combustion to figure out what to do with the choke, right? And it's, yeah, if it's cold outside, it's even harder. So it renders it completely useless for anybody to use, except for me. So I have a feeling I'm just going to repower it. Maybe fixing the head gaskets or whatever else is wrong. Maybe re-ringing it and grinding the valves. Cutting the seats. Maybe that'll give the compression back to something reasonable and it'll still work. But anyway, at this point, I moved all the bricks so I can get my Project Mustang into the shop, which is literally only 10 feet from where it is, but I can't take that route. So, move the bricks out of the way, and there's the remnants of them. The rest are in the backyard. So I got to get this thing out of the way so I can hopefully drive that. There's no steering column, but I think I can rig something up. It does run. So if you've seen a previous video, I got that thing to start. So yeah, now I'm going to move this thing out of the way. Hopefully I can coast down the hill, back yonder, and get it out of my way into a place where I can work on it. I was thinking maybe putting it inside my new shed, but this is too tall, and I have to take this thing off. With these bolts here, I could take this roll cage thing off and then it would fit in there, but I got to get the hydraulics to work to get it up so I can get the nut out of here. Yeah, if they would have put the nut on the other side, would have been fine, but they didn't. So maybe I could jack it up. I'm a pretty clever guy, so I think I could probably figure out how to make that happen. The other problem is this guy is welded, so I'll have to cut those welds, which doesn't look like it's a very good weld. That'll probably, a couple of hits with the claw hammer, it'll probably fall off. So I may just do that. I may just throw this thing into the shed, and then I'll have a nice clean place to work on it with light. And, if it rains outside, I'm not screwed. So anyway, we'll get this thing moved and see you on the other side. Okay, so to this final resting spot. Go get me some tools. Start pulling this thing out. Yep, it's old and crusty. So that's what we got. The head gasket doesn't look blown, but the other one that was blown was in between the two cylinders. Anyway, we'll get some more of this stuff disconnectorized and have this thing out of here in no time. So see what I'm up against here. Not too bad, but so I don't know what somebody was thinking, but there's the adapter. It comes out of the pump and it goes to another adapter and a coupler and another adapter and another adapter and then a coupler. And the same thing on the, I'm not sure what the fuck they were thinking. I think I'll fix that. Maybe the pump that used to be on here was really long and it ended up here or something. Anyway, it worked. That was one of the only things that didn't leak, so I didn't fix it. Yep. There it is. This is the variable drive that I replaced, or I didn't replace it. I took it apart and cleaned all the pieces up and ground some of them nice and put it back together. Anyway, I gotta take this off. That's a variable speed actuator thingy. But I think if I disconnect the mounting bolts, I think I can kind of pivot the motor like that and it'll come up with that pulley and I won't have to disassemble all that stuff in situ. Just try it. See if it moves. Oh, look at that. It moves. Does that mean there was two bolts holding it in? Scares me a little bit. Definitely no bolt up there. Good, bad, or indifferent. That's what we got. Alright, so now I'm going to rig up some chains. Pull this fucker out. Alright, we got some chains on there. Just assembled this cherry picker. No idea why it's called a cherry picker, because nobody picks cherries with them. Or whatever. That's what it's called. This is either really heavy or it's still bolted in. Alright, so she's out of the hole. Look at that beauty. Got a little bit of a mess to clean up here. Not too bad. So I'll get this all cleaned up and pressure washed. Pull that alternator out. I won't need that for the new motor. Kind of do some tidying here and there. Make it look pretty. I hate working on yucky stuff. So, I don't know, a month ago or so, I pulled this Wisconsin VH4D, I believe is what it is, 36 horsepower, flat floor, well, sorry, flathead V4 motor. I think it was designed in the 30s. It's pretty tired and old, so I limped it along. I've had this skid steer for probably 5 years now, 6 years now. And I really haven't done anything to it except for, you know, coax it to start and then move shit around. And so it's been good. Biggest problem with it is it makes a lot of noise. And it is really hard to get started. If it's cold outside, yeah, it's nearly impossible to get it started. And even if it's warm, it's really a challenge. So out with the old, in with the new. It's a 1.8 liter motor, so it's a pretty big motor for only making 36 horsepower because it's a flathead. But the combination of 1800 cc's and it's a flathead, it's really bad efficiency. So it uses a lot of fuel. It uses, I don't know, 6-7 gallons per hour running it, which is quite a lot. This one should be quite a bit better. So this is what I decided to replace it with. This is a Duromax 1000 cc almost, and it's 35 horsepower, I think. That was probably in the 20s at the end of life here because it had no compression. But anyway, we're going to take some time to retrofit this onto where that used to fit. It's the same size shaft. It's an 1 7/16 shaft. You can't see it because this hub's on here for the variable speed drive, but I will be removing this variable speed drive from the Wisconsin and putting it on there. The biggest challenge, I think, for this retrofit, it shouldn't be this. This should slide right on. I got to make a mounting plate because the mounting is obviously different on the Wisconsin. But the biggest thing is over here is where the pump used to live, and the hydraulic pump. And of course, this doesn't have a hydraulic pump drive, so I'm going to need to figure out a mount for that guy. So it appears this has a direction on it, which makes sense. I'm going to double check on this guy that it is in fact going that direction, but I also need to know what the ratio is. I need to know for one revolution of the crank, how much does that pump rotate, so I can get it kind of close. My plan is, because that motor is so much narrower, this guy is so much narrower than this guy, I'm going to slide this shiv out and then put a belt drive here, a tooth belt, and then a mount in the back, and then all the hydraulic lines will be similar. I'll probably have to modify them, but that's not a big deal. So anyway, yeah, the first thing I need to do is get some light over here so I can rotate this motor over. I'll mark it, and then I'll see what the drive ratio is between the motor and this hydraulic pump, and then I'll design up some brackets in SolidWorks and get some metal and modify, machine that stuff up, build that stuff up, whatever it happens to be, and then we'll get this guy installed. I was thinking about doing a tear down of this motor too, just like tear it down, clean everything up, wash everything, put new rings and bearings in it, grind the valves. I have a valve grinder here, throw it back together, and it could be useful for somebody. I may or may not do that because I think this motor's probably worth in pieces probably $400 or $500. Just because, you know, stuff is hard to find, and this is a complete motor. It's like everything: carburetor, intake manifold, starter, you know, everything is here. Fuel pump, you know, it all works. Governor. So I may just take it apart and clean everything and sell it as pieces, but I may put it on Marketplace and just try to sell the whole thing in one shot. But I don't know. It would make an interesting video to see how they did stuff in the 30s design wise. But I'm sure there's going to be some broken bolts involved in this whole thing and whatever. I know I already had to order this. I think it's 1 3/4 inches, and that's a tapered fit. So just getting that flywheel off is going to be a giant pain in the ass, I predict. So anyway, this is the next endeavor. I have lots of endeavors going on, right? The Mustang project, the dyno project. Yeah, someday maybe I'll restore that guy. Who knows? Bronco. But I can't really move stuff around the homestead here without my skid steer. It's super helpful for everything. So I need to pull the motor and transmission out of the BMW M6. But on a gravel driveway, that's pretty hard to do. So without Mr. Skid Steer, affectionately known as Ricardo, we can't really do that. So it's kind of like pick your battles, which ones are going to be the easiest to fight and win at this time. So that's what I'm going to do. So it's only 100 yards to the shop with all the tools and go. I think I may need a set of tools here as well, because every time you forget something, it takes you 5 minutes to little futz around there. So I'm going to put a mark here, and then I'm going to put a mark on this tooth down here. Alright. And we'll rotate this around. Did you see that mark again? Huh. I haven't seen it. Wow. Okay, so that's not what I was expecting. Unless I missed something. This went around 1.5 times before that gear went around once, which is interesting. So I'm going to do that again. Make sure I didn't fuck the dog on that. Yeah, so it's a little bit over half speed. So this would be 3 revolutions. And that's, it's just over 3-2. Interesting. I was expecting that to go faster, and it goes slower. So I'm going to get a little bit more accurate scenario on that. 67. So it's 37 teeth. I'm going to write that down on this cardboard box that I won't lose, because cardboard box. Okay. And this guy here has less than that. Mark that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Okay, so this is 24 teeth. Yeah, this looks like a good box. So we got 37 to 24. So this is overdriven from that, and that's underdriven. So we have to get my calculator out and do some math. That shouldn't be too tough. It's more like arithmetic than mathematics. Alright, so 1 crank revolution equals 1.5-ish, more like 1.6. So this thing's overdriven 1.6. No, underdriven 1.6. Yeah. So motor 1.6. Yeah. So that. So the motor goes 1.6 revolutions. This gear goes 1 revolution, and then that's overdriving to that. So if we multiply all these things together, we should get the speed of that relative to the motor, which I'm going to do right here in my handy dandy XP35HPE, which is that, which is the best calculator ever invented. And now you don't need them because free app online. Okay, 1 enter 1.6 divide 37 enter 24 divide times 0.96. Essentially that thing's running crank speed. If I didn't fuck everything up, I'm going to double check it 6 more times off camera. But I think if we just run this thing with a 40-tooth belt on this, 40-tooth belt on that, it'll be muy estylino. And now that we know that the direction of this is the same direction as the crank, then, right, because when we spin this over, let's get this camera down there, the leads. So we'll get this thing back on top dead center. Well, top dead center somewhere. There, the little chingadera is lined up. Kinda. So you can see that gear spinning around, and it's spinning the opposite direction, right? This goes clockwise, that goes counterclockwise. So once we put a gear on there, it'll be going the same speed, or the same direction. And now that we know 1-to-1 speed, we're good. And so that tells us that if we do a belt drive, then the pump has to be here, right? It can't be, the gear's got to be, like the pump's here and the gear's on this side. Let me get the pump, show you what I mean. So this thing was mounted on the vehicle kind of like that. So now it's going to have to be belt drive like that. It can't be like that. Otherwise it'll spin anti-backwards disc, which I think probably would work, but it's just a gear pump, so it doesn't really matter which way it spins, but the seals might be set up for high pressure on one side differently than the other one. So I don't want to kerfuffle something that it's not meant to do, but it will pump backwards, it just might leak. So anyway, so now I got to get this guy off and kind of cartoon up what I'm going to do for a motor mount and a pump mount. One of the things that you definitely have to be cognizant of with these pumps is this one didn't have a big side load on it because it's gear drive and the pressure angle is probably 14 and a half or 20 degrees. I haven't measured it, but it's a small number, so the amount of force in that direction, and it looks like it's a very slight helical angle, maybe 7-8 degrees, something like that. So there's very little force on the shaft pushing it this way or this way. So if you put a V-belt on it, that could be a problem because you have to have a lot of tension on it to get it to seal or to get it to not slip. But I think a belt drive should be fine. I was gonna contract up a thingy that made it so this thing just had a coupler so it didn't see any side load at all, but I may or may not do that, I don't know, I haven't decided. But that's where we're at. We'll get some stuff measured up, which will be super boring for the video. And then I'll get cartooning up in SolidWorks and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, so I recalculated some jigger jagger. What I did is I just marked top dead center on the crankshaft, and I counted how many teeth passed up in one revolution of the crank, and it was 24, which is how many teeth this guy has on it. So it's not 0.96, it's 1 to 1, which is good. So now I can use, that makes sense that somebody would science that out to be 1 to 1. I like it. So we're going with that. And then let's open up this motor. We've had it for, I don't have a cutter, so I'm using this bracket from the shed as a knife. Works, it ain't stupid. It works. So, what we got? Now these are designed in the United States. I'm pretty sure it's manufactured in China. Not sure that's how you pronounce it, but that's where it's built. But they have a facility in like Ontario, California, or something like that. So it shouldn't be too hard to get a hold of those guys, which is good. If there are spare parts needed someday. This looks really well packaged. Like, lots of nice foam stuff, corrugated paper and the sides. Like, this is really nice. Like, packaging is it's pretty good. These will make nice yoga mats. You're into yoga. Keep that in mind. This looks like some sort of a fuel tank. Not sure I'll be using that. Well, the skid steer has, so these are cables for the battery. It's like a spark plug socket. Funnel. Nice. Oh, this is not the fuel. This is the silencer. People call them mufflers. I will need to get into this a little bit because, like, if I know correctly, this goes on the vehicle or on the motor like this, which that way is forward. So this, the exhaust outlet is going to shoot right into, I don't know, right here, which is bad. So I'm going to have to saw this in half and make it go that way. So I'll probably just cut this here and here, flip it upside backwards, change the mount, blah, blah, blah. I don't really want the exhaust shooting into me back. I knew that from the get-go that I was going to have to modify that. No big deal. The other thing is the dipstick won't be sticking out of the back like it is on this one. It'll be sticking out of the front, so I'm going to have to science something out so we can access that. Looks like some basic specifications and do's and don'ts. Again, nice packaging. I just ruined. Let's make a nice short-person conversion kit right here. Keep that around in case I run into any short people. Unlikely. So this is probably too heavy for me to pick up, but I'm going to bring the camera over here. Take a look at what I got. There it is. It's the beast. So I'll probably just chop this box. My box cutter probably isn't gonna work very good, but I think this is where the muffler bolts to. Looks like they got some painter's tape on there to keep schmutz out. But yeah, this is that's going to be right into the back seat, which is not going to be helpful at all. So I may have to extend this and come all the way back, which is not a problem for highly skilled fabrication artists like myself. Probably voids the warranty and whatnot, but who cares? So ships with no oil. I think if you don't put oil in, I think it won't start. I think there is a pressure switch on this. Probably that guy right there. So if you don't put oil in it, it's not going to start anyway, so I don't think you have to worry about it. But, yep, that's the beast. Okay, so it's been 3.5 minutes since I pulled this out of the box. And I changed my plan. So this is how it came. But of course, as I said earlier, this discharge goes to forward. But, look what I got here. I got these mufflers that were on the old engine with a U-turn and another muffler. And this is the spark arrestor that was on it, which is fine. And the same size. So I may just, you know, cut this off here, spark it on here, put this on here, and now I'll have twice pipes. And maybe it'll be quieter. And maybe that's easier than hacking that thing up, mounting all that junk. So I'll just make a U-turn, shoot it out the back. So that'll be nice. So this is a kind of a comparison of the two motors side by side. Obviously, I've kind of tried to line this up with end to shaft in mind. It's probably 6 inches narrow or something like that, and I don't know, maybe 6 inches shorter in height as well. Which the other problem I'm gonna have with this thing is, well, not really a problem, but that weighs 450 pounds. This weighs 110 pounds. I might need more ballast because already the limitation on the skid steer is how much you can lift up is by the back tires coming off the ground, even with that guy. So I'm gonna have to put some ballast on there, whether it's a water tank or cobble up some cement, something. So let's get to the meat of this guy here. Engine start stop. That probably will work better when there's a battery, and then speed control. So all this stuff I'm gonna have to move into the cabin, I guess, right? I'm not gonna want to get out of the thing and change speed control or the engine start stop. So I'm gonna have to take this thing off and wire these into a panel. This has also got a kind of idiot lights and RPM. So I'm gonna take this whole thing and lengthen the wires and move it into the cabin area. So this is the starter solenoid. This looks like the rectifier for the charging system. Obviously that little guy. This is inconvenient, so I'll probably take this valve cover off and put it back here because this is going to be the accessible spot. So I'll probably just swap the fill just to make it easier. This looks like the oil cooler and the pressure switch to make sure it has oil pressure, and obviously the oil filter. I'm not sure what the alternator looks like on this thing, but it's probably like a motorcycle where the flywheel has some magnets on it and it spins around a stator, but it does have a rectifier on it, so I'm pretty sure that's part of the charging system. So all kinds of danger stuff. There's probably a throttle body and some actuation for it for the governor to work under here. Probably an air filter. Yeah. Like nice. So all this stuff should be accessible in the skid steer. So a couple modifications, but those don't have much of a detent on them. Seems like I might need to put a safety wire from there to there to keep these from flopping off, but we'll see. If it's a problem, I can fix it. So yeah, next thing I got to do is get this off of here and get the hardware to bolt it onto that, and then make up some brackets. Well, there you have it. Popped this guy off. It wasn't really held down by anything. I just had to give a little bit of heat with the torch there and slide it off. It's kind of old and mucked up, but there wasn't really anything holding it on except for goop and friction, and yeah. So that still needs to go on, but that's easy enough. Just slide it on, pop snap ring. I did measure the shaft. The shaft is in spec. It's supposed to be it's in millimeters from Duromax, but I measured it. It's 1/437, just like it's supposed to be, which is the same as that. So this fits on snug as a bug in a rug, and the keyway is the right size. So there's a step on the inside of this, so you can put a bolt and a nut and stuff to hold it from popping out. That one, of course, didn't have it, but I think somebody was in here with a saw. I don't know if you can see that, but I think the shaft has been shortened. This one's quite a bit longer, so I have all this room in here, like in maybe an inch, to put the drive pulley, belt, cover, whatever I decide to do for the pump, which will sit back here somewhere. So yeah, this was looking like it's not going to be too big of a deal. Famous last words, but it's looking okay. So that fits on. That was kind of my biggest fear, that because some of these say they have a 1/350 shaft, and some of them are a 1/400 shaft, and some say they have a 1/437 shaft. And all the research I've done says they're all the same, 1/437, and somebody just forgot to type the extra 2 digits in there. So I was a little bit concerned of that, but looking at their spec sheet, it gave me a tolerance and everything, so if it was fucked up, I could have sent it back. But that still would be inconvenient, right? I have to send it back and deal with all that bullshit and then find a different motor, yada, yada, yada. So that fits. That's good. I know which way the pump has to spin. I know the ratio is 1:1. So now I can just get to work making some brackets, and this thing should just bolt in. The other thing that I need to do is, this one is a gravity feed, whereas this guy has a fuel pump. And I don't know if you know anything about skid steer 610 or 612s, but the fuel tank is internal to the chassis. Essentially, it's just made out of like 1/4-inch plate steel, and then they just fill that up. Half of it's hydraulic fluid, half of it's oil. And I want to keep that because it's like 10-gallon capacity. But I think I'm also going to add a car fuel cell up on top of the motor where the air filter normally lives. I guess I can walk out there and explain my craziness away, but I think if I add a fuel cell that drip feeds, and then I have a little clackety-clack pump that pumps it out of the chassis tank, I guess is what you'd call it. Then I'll have, whatever, 15-gallon, 10 or 15-gallon fuel cell on the back, which will help with weight, partially. And then I'll have all the fuel filly stuff in a location that makes more sense, right? So all this is fuel tank. So you put the fuel into that, and then the inlet is here. I have a little bulb on there to, when it sits for 20 years, you got to get some fuel to it, so I just use that bulb. But I won't need to do that, right? So I'll just put a clacker pump on it, come from here, clacker pump it through the filter, and then the clacker pump will fill up the fuel cell that's up here, so you don't have to like try and dump gas in, you know, 6 feet off the ground. So you can just fill this guy, clacker pump it up to here, fill this guy again, you're good. So that was my plan, and then you have a nice consistent fuel pressure to the carburetor. And I'm not sure how much of this I already showed in previous ones, but yeah, that's all the hydraulic-y stuff. I kind of pressure washed it a bit. I'm gonna have to replace this guy here. It's only got 14 hours on it since I put that Hobbs meter on, so I think I'll just hook that Hobbs meter to the new deal. This is the hydraulic filter pressure. So I have a new one of those gauges I need to put in, and then that's to make sure it's charging, which never really worked. So anyway, yeah, this is a kind of a crappy looking rig, but she usually gets the job done, and it's starting to rain, so. And maybe the team shows up on Sunday, which is the day we work on this beast. Maybe we'll get this thing fired up on Sunday. The new blanket fenders, new exhaust, look at that. Woo! Sexy new exhaust. Yeah. Anyway, don't get distracted. Got enough shit going on. Thanks for watching. If you like this content and want more, subscribe, like, and share.